This guy's exhausted.
So what is this? Is it like a podcast? Or?
Kind of, yeah. Should I tell you?
Yeah, tell me.
So I texted you the other day and I said, what are you the most passionate about in life? And you said two things, but I'd like to start on the second one. And you said that the present economic structure is largely powered by environments that intentionally make people small and predictable. And that tech's ability to do that in increasingly subtle and insidious ways represent the greatest existential threat of our lifetime. Mic drop.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That's pretty profound.
ChatGPT.
Oh my God, did you? I think this, obviously, I know what you're building. I think I do, unless you're master of disguise. But I think starting on that, our world intentionally makes people small. And I've had conversations with you about that before, and it's sad. It's really sad. I'd like to dive into that and ask, first off, what do you mean by that?
I have been obsessively fascinated with humans for as long as I can remember. I have watched them very closely. I have been one. I have fallen in love with them and gotten angry with them and been so curious why they did the things that they did. And one of the main things that I learned in all of that time is that we do not well understand ourselves. The language we use for it does not well represent that we are a collective of things. We are not one thing. The language implies we are one thing, and that is just patently false. We're not remotely one thing by almost any definition. We are a conglomerate, we are a collective, we are an amalgamation of many completely different systems. And of course that's true externally. My toe is very different than my eyeball. It's even more true if you look internally. And we can't even see inside of ourselves physically unless there's a really big problem. You don't really want to see inside of yourself. If you see inside of yourself, something's very wrong, generally. So, as a result of all of those things, we don't understand ourselves very well. And I would additionally say we are a communal, tribal species. That's how we evolved. And whatever way of seeing ourselves we did develop naturally had a lot to do with the reflection and insight of the other people who also hold pieces of understanding about who we are. And my understanding, based on what I've seen, learned, felt, experienced, is that in the older systems, there was a different form of identity that developed as being a part of a small, close-knit unit with whom you regularly endured trials with whom you were so close to, you would often sleep on top of each other at night for warmth. That's a very deep level of intimacy that most people on the planet maybe experience with one person if they're lucky, usually not with more than one. And there's a lot lost there that's not even really easy for us to understand or talk about because it's just so different than the way almost any of us have even grown up. And I'm not saying the older way is better than this one. There was some advantages to that. There's some different ones to this one. What I am saying is that there have always been ways to exploit people, to take advantage, to overpower, to betray, to steal from. That's always been a thing. It's never been automated before. It's never been powered by billions of dollars before. There's never been able to be millions of people, very smart people, working every single day on something that, when you really boil it down, is a mass slavery system. That part has never happened. And there's a lot of problems in that you can see inherent just in that one sentence I said. And we could crack open that one sentence and go into each individual piece for hours or days. But in general, one of the challenges that I think is so much at the center of a lot of the decisions that have been made in business, but in tech specifically, is that once you push a ball or a rock down a mountain, you can't really stop it. It just picks up momentum and it goes. And I've heard brief snippets from some of the people who were responsible for those original algorithms that made
social media
so addicting.
Yeah.
And the ones I've heard are ones of regret and ones of shame in some cases. I'm not saying everyone involved feels like that, but I've definitely heard things like that. And as soon as technology is doing it and not a person, well, who's accountable for it? And who feels concerned about it? I'll tell you, nobody. And one of the more dangerous things that we've done in this modern iteration of human experience is that we've separated tech from ourselves. And it's very, very dangerous to do because A, it's not true. We made tech. It is clearly an extension of myself. If I kick you in the foot, and I've got a shoe on or something, it's not the fucking shoe's fault. It's me. I did it. There was a mechanism in between me and you. It doesn't matter. I'm the one responsible, and that's clear. With tech, not so clear, because you press the button and the ball starts rolling, and maybe for the first 5-10 minutes, doesn't do anything to anybody, and you just go your way, and then you get fired, and then you die, and the next person just comes into it with the ball already rolling. No one has oversight on those kinds of things. And that's problem enough.
And you talk about this with obviously the dawn of, for reference, of AI. And I think social media is a great comparison point because, when it came out, it was 2000, Facebook was 2008, 7, something like that. It was just like, oh my God, connection, the whole thing. And now I go out to dinner and I see no one talking. And it's completely had the opposite result of just like, it makes me so sad when the entire family just like scrolling through their phones. I'm just like, ah. And so that's the reference point in terms of, this ball rolling down a hill. We don't really know what's happening. I mean, the electricity of AI in the last even 6 months, and we met a year ago, and that's kind of when my brain started the ball started rolling in my brain around the potential, but just the amount of the explosion that we're seeing in a lot more public way in the last 6 months is it's insane. And I think I shared with you, I'm having this experience whereas a few people in my life are using it for therapy at the moment. And there's no human oversight in that. And I'm seeing people go into a state of psychosis because they're interacting with what we know as AI, as ChatGPT. And yeah, there's no human oversight. I think what I love about your story, and it's a bit of a side tangent, but maybe not, is what I've witnessed in the last year is the way that you talk about this big fat problem and see you trying to create a solution in the world. You didn't start out as a tech founder. And so that's what I'm curious about is how did this like burning desire from what I'm seeing, how did that arrive? How did you get to that point of like, I need to do this. You need to build this thing.
Because I love people. That's why I unreasonably love this species. I don't even fully understand why. I've seen a lot of the dark sides of the species. I just love them. And there's a really beautiful quote by a very wise man named Dr. George Washington Carver, who studied peanuts for like a huge percentage of his life.
I misheard that for a second. Studied penis for the large majority of his life. Peanuts, carry on.
Maybe that was unpublished work. And he said, anything will give up its secrets if you love it enough. He found over 200 uses for the peanut. For your sake, I enunciate. Crazy. That story is 200? Amazing to me. Apparently.
All food related? No,
all kinds of things. Just all kinds of things. He just kept coming back to it. And I love that. I love that you just come back to it every day. You could have stopped at 10. I would have been proud of you. You found 10 other uses instead of making peanut butter. Like, yeah. No, he just kept going and going and going. And I think that's where the truly great things happen. It's where great things get made. It's when you forget everything you know about something and you see it again, you dig in even deeper. That's how all things that are really worth finding happen. It's hard to do because our brain is efficient and lazy, and it will say, oh, it's a peanut, I know what it does. I don't need to know the other 200 things. He did, for some reason he did. And I love that in people. And for whatever reason, humans are my peanut. I don't know why. I'm just obsessed. I probably has to do with my feeling of desperation to be liked as a child, you know, and you know, the innate need to connect and be loved that we all have. An obsessive brain characteristic. I don't know all of the reasons. I just know that I always think about humans and why they do what they do. And I know so much about them that I know almost nothing. And that is not a usual thing to know about humans or ourselves. I know almost nothing. But the barest edges that I've scratched just make me go, okay, everything I've ever learned about what humans are and what they need and why they grow and why they don't, I'm constantly exploring that in my own little, you know, web. And then I go out into the world and I look at all of the systems and the technologies and the policies and so much of it. And I'm like, none of this fits at all with the things that I'm learning over here. Why? And having seen why, you know, that there's such a glaring difference between those two things. You know, if you have a friend and they have a thorn in their shoulder and they're complaining like, you know, my shoulder hurts, it's the most natural instinct to be like, well, you have a thorn, like, let me help with that. So I started in art. Art gives you a lot of permission to be weird. Art gives you permission to look at things. It's kind of the whole thing of art, is you just keep looking again and again and again. I consider what Dr. George Washington Carver did art myself. I have a broad definition of art. And I think that when you look at people from an artist's lens, there's just, you know, more of them there. And so that's the way that I started, and I made things for them, girlfriends mostly, and, you know, and then clients eventually. And I made things and tried to experiment. Okay, if I do this, then what effect does it have on the person? And, oh, this one was better than that one. And for some reason, my brain remembers all of those different things and is obsessed with trying to find the one that's the most, that brings the most joy, the most openness, the most love, all of that. And I did that first in kind of the photography world, actually first in drawing, and then next in the photography world in a much more major way. And I learned how to create micro environments while you're photographing someone that allows them to feel free to be themselves. And the beautiful thing that I love most about humans, their freeness, their weirdness, their wildness, comes flowing out. And the problem with that is I could do it for a minute and then it would fade. And I just got tired of that.
I love your story around, I'm going to interject because I love the story that you talk about when the face that people make when you're taking a picture of them. So do you mind just telling me that story?
So that I have it on here.
Yes, because it's a really good face. But then I'll come back, put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that.
Sure. Well, yeah, I feel people very strong. And so when they're being themselves, there's like an energy flowing from them. That's how I perceive it. That feels like music to me. And it could be I'm just interpreting body language from them. It could be that there's many spectrums of expression that we don't yet have good understanding for. Some people are definitely more sensitive than others. We know that. Whatever reason, I feel people strongly, and I can very much tell the difference when someone's being themselves and when someone's not. And that is hardwired into most humans. And it's interesting that even if you didn't know me very well, you would know that that's not my real smile. And as a photographer, you see that all the time. People are going,
smile for the camera.
And that face annoys me so much. It annoys probably most people, but it annoys me twice because for one, I know that's not their real face. For two, the thing that I feel from them when they do that stops. And so what I came to understand is that when somebody's doing that, it's because they're afraid. And when they're afraid, their limbic system is dominant. And when the limbic system is dominant, you basically have a very small palette of choices, which are pretty much the exact same palette of choices that a lizard has. And I've never fallen in love with a lizard.
Yet.
Not yet. So that part of us that makes us worth falling in love with is just inaccessible when the limbic system is dominant. And it's part of the larger problem with fear-driven systems in general, whether they're relationships or communities or cultures or whatever.
For this entire world right now.
It's mostly a fear-driven, system. And when we are in response to a fear-driven system, largely limbic system is, if not in charge, at least right there waiting to step in. And when that happens, you just don't get access to the best parts of people. So I saw that in quite an unusual way, which is the expression on their face. And it is a very beautiful thing to me about the body, that the body, generally speaking, unless you've trained it not to, will show you whatever the inner state is. And I think it's why we express at all. It's because we are a communal species. And when I'm expressing through my body, I can't really see my body, but you can. So expression in many ways is for the other, but it's also for me, because in response to me expressing, I see you express, and then that helps me understand myself. And so if I'm in limbic system and I'm guarded and all my expression is shut off, the most natural thing for you to do would be to join me in limbic system, fear, shutting down. And then I'm not sending my data and you're not sending my data. And so I don't know about myself and you don't know about yourself. And all of the data gets siloed. And when that happens, connection can't happen, obviously. Friendship can't happen. Love can't happen. Art can't happen. Nothing happens when the door is shut like that. So I learned how to make these little pieces and elements that switched, or made it easier to switch from limbic system into creative connective centers of the mind. And when that happened, you see instant change in people, dynamic instant change, and the beauty flows out. It's a stunning thing to watch, and I got to watch it tens of thousands of times from very, very close up, because I was a photographer and I was photographing people very, very close. I used a 24 lens, which is insane to me.
I have no idea what that means, but okay.
Well, it's a wide angle,
Okay.
so it actually distorts everybody at the edges, and I didn't even care about that part. I wanted to be close, and by being physically close to people, it's actually one of the ways that you build intimacy, and I didn't know that at the time. I instinctually found my way to that, but just by being close, somebody either accepts it or doesn't. And so if you are close and they accept it, there's an automatic intimacy and trust that starts building. Whole other tangent,
There's so much that there's so much in there. I think you asked me before we started, like, what am I doing here? What's this all about? And there's this idea of connecting people to their potential inside of them. And I think there's this resonance effect that happens when we see other people, being their authentic selves, tapping into the 200 versions of peanuts that exists. There may be the thousands more beyond that. Mm-hmm. It's not to copy them, but there's some magic. It is magic in my eyes that happens where, the power of that authentic self. And so what I see my role here as being, which you just touched on yourself as a photographer, is to hold a space where I can have people come in and be their most authentic selves. And then the goal is to broadcast these messages to the world and conversations, and who knows what comes of that yet. But yeah, talking about this fear-driven world, I didn't realize how everything is governed by fear until I started to experience the opposite. And I'm curious, I don't know if you have any stats or data perspective on that, but the version of, the human population compared to of people living in a very small-centered life compared to people who are tapping into their, I say infinite potential when it sounds a bit cheesy like that. But why do you think people do you think there's an agenda to keep us small? What do you think the whole game is that we're playing?
I think it's just the most efficient. It's the cheapest. It's the cheapest way because it's the oldest of the systems. Like I said, lizards don't love as we understand love. At least they don't express it in a way that we can measure. They do get afraid, and their fear responses are measurable, So that system is just very, very old, and because of that, it's very simple. And because it's very simple, it's very easy to trigger. That's one piece. And that's why a lot of the tech systems have targeted it, because it's probably the simplest part of the brain. Like,
so they're built off fear.
I'm not going to say all of them are, but I'm going to say a lot of them are built off the limbic system. That's what I would say. And I say, it's a little bit of a colored statement, but I will just say it anyways, that, there's three main things that the limbic system is interested in, tribalism, tits, and tacos. And that's kind of the whole thing. On the positive side and on the negative side, you've got fight, flight, freeze. So those six are kind of like the main six things, that the limbic system. I'm simplifying something very complex, but just,
You're doing well at it, yeah.
Just for the sake of the conversation, those are kind of the main things. And when you look at social media, 99.9% of all the content on there falls into one of those six categories. And so limbic system is just low-hanging fruit. And one of the reasons why I think tech focused on it is because easiest, simplest to, get somebody to behave in a certain way. That's one piece. But the other reason is that it's wired into our survival mechanism, which means that it will overpower all of the other systems. Unless you're very deeply trained, it will overpower all of the other systems when it's triggered. And as an example of that, one of the things I like to say is that the algorithms never should have been designed for attention. They should have been designed for meaning. And I get it, someone else would have designed another one for attention and the meaning one would have broken. I'm sure many meaning ones have been made and they just didn't work. I get it. But in the ideal world, attention never should have been used as the main mechanism through which a mass percentage of the economy works. And the reason for that is we could be having the most meaningful conversation in the world. And if a bear walks through that door, it doesn't matter how meaningful this conversation is. Our conversation changes instantly. You see me go like,
I would throw you towards the bear.
Yeah. I mean, if I was a regular person, I would do that. Actually, I would be like,
come at me, Zen master.
No, I would fucking freak out, like most people would.
What would actually do if a bear walked in that door?
I mean, this is a closed circuit room, so we're fucked.
We're fucked, totally.
Yeah. I would try to bear wrestle them, I guess.
I'd like to watch it. We'd have it on camera, so
yeah,
it'd be good footage to capture the attention.
Yeah. In my head, I would be thinking, this is going to get a lot of likes.
Yeah. Okay, so bear walks through the door, attention.
Yeah. No matter where, when, how, why someone is, if tribalism, tits, tacos, fight, flight, freeze enters into sensory awareness, it's very hard not to give that your full and utter attention. If somebody walked in here butt naked right now, it would be a similar kind of thing. If somebody walked in here with a steaming plate of cookies, if somebody walked in here, yelling that they were, or even not yelling, but even quietly saying that they were a part of a certain community, that's like a hate community or something like that, that both of us immediately do not identify with, that would be very attention drawing also, so it's just, you go into it and you just see those things always get attention. It's just that whether something is loud, which is to say it draws attention, is not at all the same as whether it was beneficial. And what you do see a lot in the culture is loud things and things competing for loudness so that one thing is even louder than the last thing was. I'm rewatching Mission Impossible series right now.
Sick. Did not have you down for that, but okay.
Childhood memories, I mean, Tom Cruise has been there my whole life. And
he's coming in next week.
Amazing. He's coming to my place first.
Okay.
So good for you. You can have leftovers.
Get converted to Scientology along the way.
Yeah. So he's doing this movie. It's the last one. It's spanned. The first one was in 1996, which is crazy.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, before I go watch the last one, I'm going to go watch the first one again. It's literally been since I was a child. So I go back and I watch it a couple nights ago, and it's the graphics, like the technology. This is supposed to be one of those spy shows where everything is super futuristic, and on this show, they bring out like a floppy disk, and they're like,
So small.
Yeah. And a lady comes on a plane and she opens up a briefcase with a VCR in it and she's like, "Sir, would you like to watch TV?" Like, it's like on the plane, you know? So
That's kind of cool. They saw that back then.
do you recall why I was telling you about Tom Cruise?
No, but I kind of enjoyed that. I enjoyed that segue. Attention, bears.
Oh, just to say that the way they were getting attention way back then wouldn't even work today. Like if that movie was released today, people would be like so bored.
What's that Jay-Z quote around? It's not about getting people's attention, it's keeping it. So that
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think it's changing?
Well, my point is, yeah, they
Yes.
have to do increasingly crazy things, you know, like what is he doing? He's jumping from the moon to Earth in this next one or something like that. Like it's intense.
Yeah.
And the most intense scene of the entire first movie is he drops like 10 feet on a rope and goes like this, you know, and doesn't touch the sensors at the bottom. It's iconic. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, and there's a war for our attention. And it's increasing. And as I said, the billions have been poured into it. The trillions are being poured into it. And that's bad enough because, you know, humans have been behind it. It's now increasingly not humans behind it.
It's funny you say that. What was coming to mind was just like this dehumanization of all the... I saw a friend yesterday and went to a cafe for lunch and I had the perfect seat. It was all very designed in the sense that I was in the perfect spot to witness it all. And 20 feet away, there was just all this car crash and this car flip and bent over the traffic lights and the whole thing happened and it was slow motion. I was like, and you know, the guys ran over to help people out the thing. And I was just like watching what was happening in me. And it was just, I've just witnessed something that should be so like, oh my God. And yet there was almost just like a numbing of like, oh yeah, this is what you see every day.
5 of 10. Not enough flames.
Not enough flames, no blood.
Yeah.
And it was just like making me think of, am I so desensitized to life? Yes, I am. But I think we all are, right? Maybe, well, I don't know if you are. Until you're hanging out with Tom.
We're desensitized in many ways. I agree.
It's, do you think there's hope? Do you think there's hope for the future?
I always think there's hope. And it's one of the things I love best about humans is we are a very resilient creature. Yeah. I will never believe that our hope is gone. And I think that people who get really into that loop, if there is no hope, then it's more rational to give up than to try. And if nobody tries, then the chances of us getting out of any difficult things decrease, like measurably. And so I think hope is irrational. Sorry, hopelessness is irrational.
Hope is irrational.
Even if hope itself seems irrational. I think it's a deeper form of irrationality to not try, because the size of the known is infinitesimally smaller than the size of the known. And having hope or not hope is always, almost always based on what somebody knows. And it's part of the beauty of religion as a social technology, as an internal framework, that this thing they made up called faith was basically saying, oh, I know. And what I know is that this infinite unknown thing is going to play a part in this. That is more likely, if somebody really believes that, to try instead of not try. In certain scenarios, you know, when it's used well.
Yeah.
And that's the part, I think, that we kind of lost with this obsession with knowledge and technology and science, as much as I appreciate all those things. Science done right is understanding that we don't know almost anything, but we could know it. And that's not often the way that I hear science talked about. I usually hear science talked about the studies that
very definitive,
blah, blah, blah.
Like, yeah.
You know, and it's like, yes, I appreciate that part of science. We use it every day. It's not the most interesting part of science to me. The most interesting part is that used well, it's a beautiful vehicle to go into the part we don't know yet. Mm. And when you're talking about hope specifically, you know, irrational reasons for hope. what can we don't hope, that there's an alien that's going to fix all of this, because we don't have evidence for that, So if you're always backward looking in your hope, it would be easy to understand why many people feel hopeless. But I think mystics, which are people who look at the unknown for a very long period of time, and I think the best scientists are mystics, the best artists are mystics. All of the most interesting people I know are ones who spend a long time closely looking at what they don't know. The unknown itself is their peanut, that they keep coming back to and not knowing and not knowing and not knowing, but increasing levels of knowing while you're still not knowing. That to me is like peak human experience, is when you're that bridge between those two.
I mean, yeah, everything that you just said, I so relate to. This idea of whole collective, which is really how do other people access their infinite potential? I mean, I've had this notebook, which I've had for the last 3-4 years. It's been my notepad that I've been looking at stuff in, my work stuff, and I opened it on the first page, and I was writing this vision for whole collective 3 years ago, 2022. And all the ways that things have unfolded in the last few years, I could never have known. And that's been the magic and the mystery of, I have an idea of what this thing is supposed to be. I have an idea maybe that we're then going to record some interviews. I've got some people coming in, conversations, then go out and pitch, get some money for sponsorship and brands, and then edit, cut, then have a toolbox the other end. But I really don't know. And that's kind of the magic and the mystery to me, which I'm finding so fun. I started these conversations last week, and life had been so hectic that I didn't know what my first conversation was supposed to be. And I was like, no, just have a chat. Like, I didn't plan any of this apart from I got your text. And I think we're so convinced that we can control everything. My entire life, I was like, if I figure out and control everything and know all the things and tick all the boxes, then I'm going to be safe. And I think that fear mentality of we've been told to fear the unknown. And for me, it's now becoming cool. Well, what if it's the most exciting place? Mm-hmm. Has that always been the case for you in terms of embracing that unknown piece?
No, I think I'm either more curious than most people are, or my curiosity was rewarded more younger. I don't know for sure, but there definitely is a very strong level of curiosity in me that has only ever deepened over time. And I think that when you're lucky enough to have your curiosity rewarded young, and you get a win from that, it changes the structure of your brain, that's what the reward system is for, is to solidify and incentivize beneficial brain changes. And I won with curiosity. I won in different ways. And when I look back, there's definitely not like a specific moment that I can think of. There's some things that, I could possibly attest to that. So I don't know the complete mix of nature, nurture, but I did become very curious at a younger age, and I continued and continued and continued. So the thing about learning, exploring, discovering, all of that, is it does have a lot to do with comfortability in the unknown. Because if I'm terrified in the unknown, then my limbic system is in control, and I've got those 6 choices, and none of those 6 choices by themselves will ever get you to the discovery. Curiosity is not one of those 6 choices that I just mentioned, So when the limbic system is up, discovery is basically impossible. And it's what people talk about when they say trauma, which has been such a popular kind of subject over the last years. They mean, oh, something is happening internally that's not even really necessarily related to what's happening right now. And they can't be curious about the moment that they're in, because they're inside of a terrifying experience internally that they are experiencing in that moment, just as an internalized experience, So I won, and then I won again, and then I won again, and I won so many times in the unknown that my brain is just as comfortable generally in the unknown, in certain kinds of unknown, as in known spaces. And to be honest, most known spaces kind of bore me a lot. So I'm a person who needs a lot of novelty at this point to feel like I'm being useful and helpful, and that I'm growing. I just got addicted basically to growing itself and learning. And I don't like saying the same things twice. I don't like thinking the same things twice. I even gave myself an experiment once to try to notice what were the 5 most common thoughts that I had and write them down. And then once you write them down, you see them, and then you notice when they come up again, and then just be like, no, I've thought that thought hundreds of times, thousands. Why would I ever think this again? Waste. And most people become so formulaic. They just repeat again and again and again and again and again. And they just kind of erase out huge percentages of their life for being open to things like connection and discovery and creation and all those kinds of things. So for whatever reason, because my brain became shaped that way, it is a virtuous cycle that just keeps increasing, generally speaking, in reward. And now that I have won so many times from that, not only am I not afraid, I am like what you said, I get excited a lot of the time about the possibility of not knowing. And that, coming back to your question, is where my hope is from. My hope is not from what I see in the present world, because if I look at the present world, I don't, there's not a lot of reasons to be hopeful about that. I'm hopeful about the things that I don't see, but that I know do exist and could happen. And that's why I spend every waking moment of my life building a future that does not exist yet, because it's a hopeful future.
It's funny, I think there's this idea of, everybody, this idea that other people are going to come save us, or somebody else is going to save me, or somebody's going to take my pain and my problems away. And, I think about the journey of the last few years, and there's a lot of fear. There's so much outside. I don't watch the news anymore, but there's so much to see in terms of what's happening in the world that is very sad. And I catch myself of, am I so insensitive around what's going on in the world? But then I think about, this capacity to create my own life right now. That's the magic trick that I think every single one of us has access to. And you're doing that right now. Like what I've witnessed, how the business the last year, of just how we're creating all of it. There's a desire in me to create this dream to help some other people. There's a desire in you, which I think is pretty much the same thing, is to be of service to humanity. And things that neither one of us could ever have engineered or thought about arrive. And I think that's the magic of being alive. And I guess there's like if I can create what's happened in the last few years, like, who knows? Like, I put out this outrageous dream that I'm going to headline Glastonbury 4 or 5 years ago, when I hadn't written any music and I hadn't sung for anyone really. And then slowly but surely, Glastonbury hasn't called yet, but there's music along the way. There's these ideas that have come to, this sense of reality. And it's that feeling. Like, I don't have the money or the relationship or the job or the house or any of the things that I thought I needed to be happy, but it's that fire that I'm feeling of like, oh my God, it's like this turn on to life, which has just suddenly happened. And I think that's the feeling that I believe is available for everyone. And it's what I'm seeing in you is like, you have that on steroids. Like, you have this appetite for like, let's go.
I think one of the things that's easy to misunderstand about people who do things that end up shaping the world in big ways is they almost always seem to be kind of self-obsessed, self-absorbed in their own world, is like a way you often describe people like that. And many of them drift further and further out from other people and often become recluse even. I mean, you see it in Michael Jackson, like all of the forces he went through that shaped him in the way that he did. No comment on, all of the other parts about that. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to know the secret of invention, be alone. You see people like Elon Musk, making increasing choices that most of the rest of us don't understand. I'm not justifying any of that. I'm not agreeing with any of that. I'm just saying people who make outsized impacts spend their time differently than people who don't. It's like a very kind of simple thing. And one of the things that I notice, being a person who has built things that have impacted many people, you know, when I was younger, is that I'm always interacting with what I perceive to be these very large forces. And you could name them so many different things. You know, you could say it's the human system. You could say it's biology. You could say it's God. You know, you could say it's science. I mean, those are all just names for very large things that are all beyond, you know, beyond us. And my sense is the quieter that you get, the more that you tune out that kind of attention grabbing cacophony that a lot of the world is made of, you just kind of start seeing things like, wow, we're on an Earth. We're on a whole planet. And it's too large for us to see, but it's always there.
Yeah.
And it's like we're in a galaxy, and there's a sun out there. I mean, we all are like, oh yeah, the sun. You know, the sun is not obvious. Like, there's nothing that's obvious about what the sun actually is. The only reason we think it is because, you know, we've all seen pictures of it, like on space movies and stuff. There's a very bright light in the sky. We know that. But what the sun actually looks like,
Could just be a big, like, you know, torch up there.
it could be so many things, and our ancestors made up different ideas for what it could be, but we all like, you know. I'm so impressed with the people who found out, because it's not obvious what it is, and it's not obvious that the Earth is spinning. It's really not. It's not obvious that the world is round. I mean, so the people, what I'm basically saying is that when you spend your time looking in the unexpected directions, you see so many things, and you see that they're so much bigger than us, that I think often that way of spending time is referred to as selfish. And in many ways, it's kind of the opposite. It's like, I have almost no sense of self because I spend so much of my time looking at things so much larger than me. How I would have to be an idiot to think that I was even comparable to those things, let alone like beyond them or beyond anybody else. I have no space for myself in such things because I just see the massive forces at play here, you know, and I'm not looking at space so much. I'm looking at humans and how humans become, and how that takes millions of years, and how it takes generations, and how billions of us are all shaping each other. Those are among the large forces that I'm looking at.
I think that kind of shapes along the other thing that you're on the text that you shared, which was just the environments that shape us. You know, how humans are shaped by their environments, and how that's the most, you know, powerful. I could read it, or I could. I'll read what you said.
Read it.
Okay, read what you said.
That one wasn't.
I'll give you a prompt. Okay. It said, you know, how humans are best described as a response to an environment. That most of what we think we know about each other and ourselves is better described as a relationship with environment, often which is unseen and nearly entirely discounted rather than data on our essential nature. This is really poetic shit, you know.
Thank you. I mean, I think that it's so funny to me because people often describe me as like philosophical or poetic or whatever, or romantic.
He's just looking at tits and tackers and tribalism on the internet.
Yeah, I don't really think of myself that way. That's just literally like how I see everything. And so it's always a little funny to be like, let's try a more or a less philosophical approach. And I'm like, what do you mean less philosophical? That wasn't philosophical. But apparently it presents that way. But I do spend a lot of time trying to say things that are hard to say. And I do try to spend a lot of time building things that help people access all of the stuff that is hard to access. Because again, I perceive it to be like the core essential piece of us is not the thing that we seem to be, but the thing that we could be. And that probably sounds poetic and philosophical and romantic.
It's like music to my ears.
But it's a very real thing. And one of my simplest ways of explaining it is, if you think of the hand is a thing that can take many different shapes. And so if you ask the hand, which is your real shape? Like, show me the actual shape. Like, who are you really, hand? You know, maybe it would shift between all of the different shapes. You could never say one of the shapes was more the hand than another shape was. The hand is all of the things that the hand could possibly be. So I actually say The essential nature of the hand is not any of the shapes, it's the ability to take shapes itself. That to me better describes what a hand is, the ability to take a myriad of shapes.
The creative spirit is that, as we as humans, rather than the shape that we take, but it's the ability to create.
Yes, not only our ability to create as an external, which is usually what that means, but our ability to decide from moment to moment to be an entirely different thing. And that process for most people is subconscious, so they don't really see it happening. And because they tend to be pattern-based, which most of us are, we're around the same things again and again. So we have this persistent response of ourself that we've developed that we don't even recognize as choosing. And because it's happened so many times, it solidifies into something like that ball rolling down the hill I was talking about. And I was like, oh, this is just the way that I am. You know, a hockey player, somebody who identifies like that, or a hockey fan, is more likely to be at a hockey stadium than I am. And because of that, they will get validation from a lot of other hockey fans who dress just like them and look just like them and scream just like them. Even more validation. Oh, they are a hockey player, you know, and they'll have a hockey stick in their house. So you see how identity itself just kind of compounds, because the more you become a certain thing, the more you will find yourself in places where that thing is accepted or is valued, or at least is recognized as that.
And are you saying that the more that we concrete in our environments, which are the same, I'm putting words in my head, we don't tap into that potential of our who we could be, because we're cemented in...
Yeah, in a weird way, the further and further and further you identify with anything, the further and further and further you get away from what you actually are. Just come back to the hand, you know. If I did this all of the time, it would eventually just stick like that. And it would actually be very hard to move like that, but my muscles that made this one happen would be massive, you know, and then I would try to do something else, it would actually hurt, and I would be weak, and I'd be like, no, I'm going back to this particular thing. And even if you are very, very good at being a thumb, great. There's a lot of things this shape cannot do, and one of them is, well, I won't say what one of this, but you know, there's just a lot that it can't do that it should be done.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not putting this down, it's amazing. But what I'm saying is,
in isolation, it's limited.
It's inherently limited. Like that's what a shape is it is a limiting, like a specific kind of limiting. When I'm using my mouth right now, it's taking a shape and then it's dissolving the shape and it goes back to no shape. And that's the thing that allows a constant stream to come out.
Do you think everyone can be, global population, 8 billion people right now, and taking away like the poverty, you know, that line, but if you look at the population of people who have basic-ish needs met, you know, job, shelter, kind of stuff, do you think within this lifetime people can access the tools that enable them to access all of what they might be, all of the shapes that they can be?
I think that if the world was built in a way that made it more obvious we were more things than the thing that we think we are, then more people would access that state more frequently. I'm not telling you I'm always here in open hand. I move through identities, I think, much easier than most people do. I can pick them up and set them down more easily, and I see that as an advantage, at least comparing to my former self that could not do that as easily. And Darwin said it quite beautifully, you know, and he was a pretty practical fellow, and he said, it's not the strongest that survive, it's not the most intelligent, it's those that are most responsive to change, it's those that are most adaptive. That's what he saw as the prime survival skill. And so getting stuck in identities just decreases your ability to adapt. And adaptation is the core of our whole, you know, species. And so you look at like who invents things and who creates the world that everyone else is consuming, and who writes the symphonies, and it's the people who are the most adaptive. There's no other way to ever get to that, because if I'm always just doing this again and again, no offense to the hockey player, but if somebody is so obsessed with watching hockey, or any other thing, there's probably not a lot of growth in that particular area, you know? If you're learning about hockey, or you're studying about hockey, or you're training to be a hockey player yourself, there's growth in all those areas. But just watching it again and again and again is limiting a person's total capacity of what they could explore, feel, discover, contribute. And the way the economic structure has worked out is they want as many people as possible to watch hockey or Taylor Swift or some version of that. No offense to any of those things, but they're just watching, being the same person that they were yesterday.
Yeah.
And then there's an ad that comes on, buy this, buy this. And that's the way the structure is built. So the present economic structure is rewarded the more people are this. The present structure doesn't want people like me who they have no idea what I am, because I have no idea what I am. I could completely change tomorrow. How do you market to me? I might not like it anymore. I'm hard to market to for that particular reason. And that makes me, non-ideal as a customer for a lot of those places. And it makes me angry to think of how much energy has been put in to making people the same just so they could sell them stupid shit that they don't even need in the first place. Like, I want to destroy that. I don't like it. It's disrespectful to me in the same way as if you saw a baby, that was tied up from birth, just like, ropes put their hands in certain directions. It's disgusting to me. It's like, that's not what we're made for. We're made to grow, move, explore, eat, put this in our mouth, spit it back out. Babies live ideal human life in that part, and you see what they get from that. Huge connection, huge joy, huge aliveness, huge discovery, huge learning. Like, all of the real ideal things come from that part of what a baby is. Unfortunately, that space needs protection. It needs people who are much smarter and wiser to look out for it constantly. Technology could be that. If technology was designed to hold those parental kind of spaces, we could explore so much more than we do without taking the risks that exploration requires right now.
Which is a segue into, do you want to talk about what you're building or no?
I think I would talk about it simply. I mean, you can obviously tell I can talk about anything for a million years.
But like this idea of, we're coming back to the first point around the vision, the dream is if I'm seeing in the space of a few years how much joy and connection and love I can create in my own life. And the way that I'm kind of phrasing this series is like 6 years ago, I wanted to kill myself, and now I love my life so very much. And it's simple. It's simple. I have home, family, friends, community, work that I love. Like, it's a really simple life. And that capacity has all happened within me, and there's so much unknown to explore. And the world that I'm holding in a high vision is, well, what if people weren't constrained into that small version of who they are? And what you just described around that, people being kept small, it's not, when you're in it, you have zero awareness that that's what's happening. Like, it's a totally unconscious thing. So if people are hearing that and it doesn't register, then the reality is probably they're in it, I guess it's a reference to the Matrix in some capacity, but, what's that shift point, or how do you, if someone who's maybe hearing this and is maybe resonating but doesn't really understand it, like, how do you get from that awareness of my life is?
I think the complexity of everything we've talked about, which I know has been a wandering missive,
have fun,
is in any given moment, you either are exploring or you are not. That it really is as simple as that. And it has nothing to do with morality, but it does have to do with joy, and it does have to do with contribution, and it does have to do with meaning and with purpose. And a purpose is one of the main things that I see missing from a lot of the present world structures. It's fed us in a way we've never been fed. I love that. It's given us access to interesting thoughts and minds from all around the planet. I really appreciate that. It's showed us things that are possible that we didn't know were possible before. I really love that. One of the big dearths that we have right now is purpose. And in a small tribe, when your job is to weave the basket into the thing, and then that gets carried in the berries, and you know what your purpose is, and there's something there for you. Work these days is not the same thing that work used to be for most people. And a lot of work has to do with moving ones and zeros from here over to there, which our senses did not evolve to understand as a meaningful thing in the same way as somebody making a meal for somebody and them going, this is the best peach cobbler I've ever had.
So tangibility in it.
There's a sensorialness about the meaningful things that you kind of miss out on from what I've seen in a lot of corporate space. And obviously a huge percentage of the world is in that corporate space. And part of the thing that I got lucky about was I was building things, making things, saying things that moved people. And I got to see it happen. I got to see their face tell me, this fucking moved me. I have stunning stories I could tell you about people from all around the world whose faces I will never forget. They got burned into my memory because something I said or did moved them, which internally moved me and rewarded and incentivized that part of me that just continued to do that. So coming back down to a very simple place, we don't have to explore all of the time, but you can't ever make a new friend without exploring. You can't learn a new thing without exploring. You won't have that joy that you get when you realize something or have an epiphany, or even a new restaurant. You're like, I love this restaurant. It's my new favorite restaurant. You can't get that without exploring. So love is not a thing that can happen without exploring. Exploring is a prerequisite to basically all of the best parts of being human. And exploring is not really something that we're taught. It's kind of taught out of us in a lot of ways. Schools, most of them, they punish exploration rather than reward it.
That's your purpose, being an explorer.
I agree. That is the human purpose, is to be an explorer. That's a very great way to say it. And so everything I'm building could be simplified by saying, I want to make exploration easier. I want to reward people more for it. And we have figured out a system on a very large scale that makes that possible. And there's a long journey between where we are now and that, but I see it so clearly. I feel it so clearly. It's already made in my experience. And so I'm just doing what I can to bridge those two distances between that possible reality and this one. But why I think it even has a hope is because not only does a person who has come alive to exploring and become very good at it, such as myself, let's just say, have a lot of those qualities that are, I think, beneficial qualities to experience personally. I've also contributed a lot more to the GDP than most people because I've made things, I've tried things, I've created systems. There's microeconomies that formed because of things that I did. People made a lot more money on certain things because of things that I made that allowed them to do that. And that's just now happening on an entirely new scale that's boggling my mind a little bit. And I'm not saying that to give myself a high five. I'm saying that to say, people who explore more tend to be more contributive, even in an economic way. So if you can get more people exploring, and if you can do that in a way where they're incentivized to do that rather than exploited, then you can actually increase total GDP, and there will be more wealth for more people to, pass and, share and all of that. So exploration, it's really at the heart of not just the soft, mushy, beautiful parts of life. It's also at the heart of value creation in the most hard economic terms as possible. Exploration covers that entire gamut, to say it's good for love, it's good for work, it's good for friendship, it's good for learning, it's good for joy, it's good for purpose. That's a lot of fucking things. There's nothing else that holds that many of them. So why isn't this the main thing that we're talking about all of the time? Why isn't it built into every single system to optimize for it? Because the thing that I said before, the current system works entirely from people not really exploring and just sitting there and, consuming.
Thank you.